I'm going to cover our advocacy talk this morning. So I will introduce myself, but I am your chapter social worker, and my name is Margo. I earned my bachelor's degree from a very small state school in upstate New York called SUNY Brockport, or State University of New York College at Brockport. And then I earned my master's degree from the University of Buffalo with a concentration in health, mental health, and disability. And then we moved to Tennessee 6 years ago. I am a native New Yorker, love New York, all things New York. But we are here now, and I love the Mid-South. So that is me. Let's talk about advocacy. I will share my screen with you, and we will get going. All right. Too many windows. All right, advocacy, building relationships, building our future, presented by myself. I have no disclosures to make at this time. So how can you advocate effectively for the HD community? What does HD impact? It impacts everything in our life. It impacts our friends, our relationships, our health. Everything in your life is touched by HD. One of the things that we focused on quite a bit in Memphis is our grassroots advocacy approaches. These are all pictures that I found on social. So if they were on social, I assume there was consent to share them. So grassroots advocacy is important. We've gotten to know our members of Congress in Memphis. We've met with David Kustoff. We've met with Marsha Brown. We've had 2 meetings with Lamar Alexander, but I could only find one photo. Getting to know our members of Congress is super important because they are they work for us, right? We are their boss. And we go in there and we talk with them about the needs that are important in Memphis. And yes, sometimes we've had to meet with some of them more than once, but things happen when we meet with our members of Congress. We talk about the HD Parity Act. We talk about Medicaid. We talk about Medicare reform. We talk about the things that we are needing in Tennessee, and they can be productive. When we met with Marsha Blackburn and her staff, this top photo on the right, that was the guy with the Santa Claus beard. That is her healthcare director. And we had one successful meeting with him. And you know what happened next? I get an email 2 weeks later that she is signed back on as a co-sponsor of the HD Parity Act. Things happen when you talk to your member of Congress. We've got to go back and do some more stomping, and we'll cover what that looks like in the digital era in another slide, but it is important to do. And I'm not gonna lie, the first time I did it, it was kind of scary. It was a little nerve-wracking. I had all kinds of notes and papers, and our first meeting in Memphis was with Lamar Alexander, with his staff, with his Memphis staff right here. And I really was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. But it was amazing. And it's turned out to be a lot of fun. And I've really enjoyed being able to go. And we were doing meetings maybe monthly, almost monthly in the Memphis area, kind of like on a rotation. But then COVID came and they've had to stop. And I've had to go back and learn more about how do we continue to do this during the digital era. And we'll cover that, because I think that you guys will be excited to hear what the options are. So getting to know your members of Congress, super important to let them know what we need. We build relationships with our members of Congress. It's essential that we as a community are reaching out to them, that we're calling them, that we're visiting them, that we're getting to know who they are and what we need them to do for us. We want to make it easy to communicate with them. We can send emails, we can phone call, we can set up now Zoom meetings. We can invite them to our events. They could come to a virtual support group meeting. They could come and participate in a virtual walk. I've asked them to come to our golf events. I've asked them to participate in our night out for a cause events at Crosstown, at our local brewery when we're doing those fundraisings. We can send them information from the Centers of Excellence. There's lots of ways that we can build relationships with our members of Congress to get them to know what we need and what HD is. Advocating during the time of social distancing. That was one of the questions that I had in a recent kind of catch up with Jennifer Simpson, who is our advocacy director. I asked her, I said, what does this look like during COVID? Because I'm sure that they're home too, just like everybody else. And she says that now we do Zoom meetings, just like we're doing right now. And it's going to look very similar to what we've done in the past. The joy about a Zoom meeting is we don't have to drive. In Memphis, we don't have to drive to the federal building anymore, find parking, figure out which of 7 doors is the correct door to get into, go through the metal detectors, be patted down, ride the elevator up to the 13th floor, and then wait for our appointment. We can schedule appointments when they're convenient for us and for them. It eliminates the driving, it eliminates parking, it eliminates you having to take a day or a half day off from work to be able to meet with our members of Congress. You can do it from the comfort of your home. All you're going to need is a computer or a smartphone. That's it. Or even a phone, because you can call into Zoom. So if you're on the road, you can still participate. Requesting a meeting. It's fairly simple to do. You just literally go to their website. That's how I've always started it until I knew who the staffers were and the coordinators were for their office. Now I have a direct contact and I just email them directly. But when it all started, you go to their website, request a meeting. We do want to make sure when we're talking about somebody who's in our House of Representatives that at least one person in that meeting lives in our zip code. So when we went and saw David Kustoff, that's why they asked us, like, what's your zip code and where do you live? And even sometimes specifically, like, well, are you on north or south of Poplar or east of west of Walnut Grove? You know, those kinds of questions, because they want to make sure some districts are split, that we live in the district that they cover. But like I said, it all starts with a simple email or visiting their website. Actually is how I started with all of it. One afternoon, I just sat down and sent a message to everybody going on their websites. So using this example out of Ohio, at the top of the website, there's always like a services or a contact page, and you click on that link, services or contact. Most of them, I usually see contact. So I click on contact and then schedule a meeting or scheduling a request. And then you fill out the form. In Memphis, I always ask to meet at the local office, because you can have a question about, is this going to take place in Ohio or DC? I guess now in COVID, it's kind of, I don't necessarily know how important where our location is, because we're all home. But here, when I know we're visiting at the local office, I pick Tennessee. And then sometimes if they have more than one office, like our senators, you have to pick which office you want to go to. And then I select a Memphis location. And then who's making the request, I provide them with all of my information. Sometimes there's an option on the website to include any documentation. So if it's like an education day that I want to invite them to, I send that. If we're going to talk about the HD Parity Act, I send them a copy of the Senate bill or the House resolution bill so that they have it right there. I have, like, you know, these PowerPoints, I might send them that as well, so they know what we're coming in to talk about. The staffer at Lamar Alexander's office, I think, said it the best. He said, it is my job to talk with anybody about anything, but they still like to be prepared. So I sent them the information. And then I got a phone call back or an email 2 days later about, hey, here are some dates and times that work for me. What's going to work for you? And then I said, well, let me get back to you on that, because I've never done this. And you reach out to your chapter social worker if you want help. I feel very skilled now in helping people with advocacy, or Jennifer Simpson. So you've scheduled the meeting. Next steps. Once you've scheduled your meeting, you can reach out to Jennifer Simpson about, hey, I have this meeting scheduled. What are the next steps? What do I need to do? What do I need to say? She can walk you through it. I have scripts. She has scripts that you can follow. But honestly, it often usually feels like you're just sitting down with a friend, maybe who you haven't seen in a while, and catching up on what's happening in the HD world, what's happening with research. They ask some of those questions like that. They want to know about how many persons in Tennessee might be impacted by the disease. They want to know about what is the disease, what is the impact that HD's had on your life and in your world, and you share your personal stories. It's really, really an amazing experience. And I'm looking forward to going back to doing some advocacy again, hopefully in person in the very near future, but also through Zoom. So we talk about the HD Parity Act. Remember that HD Parity Act, both in the Senate and in the House, we're asking them to waive the 2-year waiting period for Medicare once somebody is approved for Social Security. Because right now, the only people who get Medicare when their Social Security disability is approved is if you have ALS and end-stage renal. And we want to be able to add HD to that list as well. In a meeting before that some of you guys were attending, I'm like, all that we're looking for to the bill, the one that's currently written, is a comma in Huntington's disease. That's it. That's all that we're asking for. That's what it boils down to, is a comma in Huntington's disease after ALS and end-stage renal failure when we're talking about approval for Medicaid when you get disability. Local issues is something that I haven't tackled yet, in part because I'm only one person and I need help with advocacy, and help comes from the families that I support. So local advocacy is equally as important as that federal advocacy, that HD parity advocacy that we talked about. It's a local advocacy where we can get changes made to Medicaid and to nursing home regulations. Because though Medicaid is a federal program, it's carved out and managed by the state, and each state manages their Medicaid program differently. So this is where local advocacy, reaching out to our local, our Tennessee level representatives, is very important. So actually in Tennessee, you're going to go to their website, capital.tennessee.gov, to find who's your legislator in your area. And you're going to click Find My Legislator. You're going to put in your address, and then it's going to tell you who you need to contact, who covers your district, your area, your zip code, sometimes down to your street, depending on how the district is split. And then this is an example for somebody in Nashville, and then that's who you advocate with for your area in Nashville. So advocacy, remember, it's a sprint. I'm sorry, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's taken many meetings. Like I said, we've been to Lamar Alexander's office twice, and we'll go back again this year, and that would be a third meeting since we've started our local advocacy efforts. And same thing too with David Kustoff. We'll go back and we'll see him again, and that would be our second meeting. We have to continue to push and to press for what we need, because when we stop talking, they stop listening. And I know it might be feeling kind of hard right now with everything else that is circulating in DC, but our needs are equally as important as the upcoming election, as filling the new vacant Supreme Court seat, as anything else, COVID and whatever else they might be having on their plate. We still need to continue to talk about what is important to the HD community. Questions, concerns, suggestions? What can I answer for you? Advocacy in a flash. We're all going to be experts. If I put a call out there for congressional level advocacy, I'll have some takers, some people who want to come and get on a Zoom call with us and with Lamar Alexander.
If people don't want to use the chat function, you can also unmute yourself to ask a question if you prefer to do that.
And I'll stop recording for that. They should be keeping track of every phone call, letter, visit that they get. So if you don't want to participate in virtual or digital advocacy or even in person, you can make phone calls. You can get somebody to call on your behalf. You can get somebody to write on your behalf. And I'm fairly certain I have some advocacy cards that I can send out if you're interested in doing that. You just, I can email them too. I have got them on a PDF file. You just fill in your name, and then a little story, a little line about your HD story, and then I get them to Jennifer Simpson or myself, and we figure out where they need to go. We can also do that as well too. There's been card writing campaigns. There's lots of different ways to be an advocate for the larger needs of the HD community, both at the federal and state level, that don't require in-person meetings. And I would fully agree with you on that, that advocacy is not just stomping on stomping and knocking on the doors of your members of Congress and your state legislator. It is being an advocate for the community. It is teaching somebody about HD. It is being involved in walks. It is talking to staff at long-term care facilities. It is talking to your providers. If you're working with, you know, dentists or doctors or nutritionists or somebody in your life who doesn't know what HD is, it's saying to them, like, this is what it is. This is how it impacts my life. So advocacy can happen on a phone call to a friend or a neighbor. It doesn't always have to be, hey, let's just talk about HD Parity Act. There are many ways to be an advocate. You know, it's wearing a shirt. It's being an advocate. There's lots of ways that we can do and we can be advocates. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, Dr. Brazina, he is a local reproductive endocrinologist, will be coming on about 9:45. So we can come off of mute if you guys want to just chat among